noticed.
Hi everyone, this is Arthi from Human Chapters. I'll tell you a little bit about Human Chapters. Humans are living narratives with a past, present, and future. These narratives constitute of a number of chapters across a lifespan. The aim of these conversations is to highlight a chapter of the narrative and unpack its connections to other chapters. I don't care whether people are natural storytellers, but I truly do believe each one of us has a worthy story to share. Acknowledgement to country. We acknowledge the traditional owners of the land which now comprises Greater Shepparton. We pay respect to their tribal elders, past and present and emerging. We celebrate their continuing culture and we acknowledge the memory of their ancestors. Today, we are going to be talking to Zoe, and Zoe's chapter is Happiness Through Change. I'll pass on the floor to Zoe to introduce herself. Go for it, Zoe.
Thanks, Artie. Well, my name's Zoe and I'm 40 and I am a mother of 3 children, so 20, 13 and 4. Big age gaps there. Wouldn't recommend it, but that's just how it happened. And stepmom or Zozzle to 2 more beautiful girls who are 13 and nearly 8. I work as a learning support officer at a primary school where I concentrate primarily on literacy support, so really giving support to children who just need extra help in those areas, especially reading is what I concentrate in, which I love because I love reading and I'm really passionate about children's literacy skills, building on that and just what it can do for a person, an individual throughout their whole life. It just does not stop. So language and reading and how that ties in with communication, especially in today's world, we really need to be an effective communicator. That's what I love. So I'm in the job for me. I also have 2 little kind of side hustles that I do, which is they're probably more hobbies that I can make a little bit of money from, and that's I do dried flower arrangements. So I do that, and I just really love it because always love flowers, and it's just something that it's really relaxing to do, and it keeps me busy and it keeps me occupied because I'm one of those people that really does need to have a project on the go all the time, as if I'm not busy enough. There's like 7 children, but that's okay. 7 of us altogether, 5 children. And the other thing I do is grazing boxes for my friends if they want one, and I love doing that. And I think I just must like making things look pretty. There's probably some whole psychology behind that, but yeah, that's what I do. So yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Zoe. And what a wonderful introduction. Tell us what got you thinking about your chapter name, first of all, Happiness Through Change. And where did your journey begin in this chapter?
Well, I've recently turned 40 and I've been kind of thinking about where I am in life and how I feel. And I don't know if it's a combination of just kind of having the time to reflect. I mean, the last 18 months has given us a lot. And especially one of those things is time to reflect. And I think it's that. And when you reach a milestone birthday, I think you kind of, there's this need to kind of reflect on your life and talk about and think about, are you where you thought you'd be? And for me, the answer is no. This is not where I thought I would be at 40. I don't even really know, but 30, when I turned 30, I was probably not the happiest I've ever been. And I just had this whole notion that 40 was going to be different. My kids were going to be older. I don't know, I was just going to be happier. And as it turned out, like I had a dream to go to New York to celebrate my 40th. And obviously that didn't happen, but I was sitting in my backyard on the day that I turned 40, and I just was so grateful for my life and where I was and the people that I have in my life. And I thought, this is true happiness. I feel really happy, probably the happiest that I've ever felt in my life. I feel happy with who I am as a person and accepting. And I think that just, I think when you reach that point, that's really significant. And happiness is not something that people create for you. You really have to do it yourself. And it's not an overnight thing, as we were talking about before. It's like 40 years in the making, I guess. And yeah, just really interested in this idea of happiness and where it comes from and how we obtain it. And I guess the title Happiness Through Change sort of relates back to having sort of endured some traumatic events in my life and not necessarily bouncing back, but being able to live through it and still be positive. So it probably started when I was about 10. My parents separated, or divorced, and that was a really significant point in my life. And you know, you're 10, and I just felt really alone because I just didn't. None of my friends' parents were divorced, and I just felt so I just really couldn't talk to anyone about it. And I just hated feeling different. And I think when you're a kid, you don't necessarily want to feel different. I think it's just better to blend in. And I think we can all relate to that at some point in our lives. And so we moved, it was my brother and I at the time, and we moved out with mum, and she bought the worst house in the best street in our town, and she did it up, and she loves renovating. And to her credit, like, I don't know how she did it on the budget that she had, but she turned this house into the most beautiful house. And we were just really happy and proud of it. And I had to move schools because we moved from one end of town to the other, and it was zoned. So we had just celebrated a year in that house, and we had dinner, and we were kind of really reflecting on, you know, kind of how far we'd come. We'd go and stay with Dad every second weekend, and life was okay. Like, it was sort of getting back to normal. And then the very next day was a Wednesday in April, and my mum was a nurse, and she was getting ready to start an early morning shift at the nursing home that she worked at. And we had a babysitter, an elderly babysitter, who would come and look after us in that morning period where we'd be getting ready for school. And it was about 6:30 in the morning, and she walked into our house. She had a key, she opened the back door, but someone was in the area at the time. And this man followed her in, and first of all, he demanded money. I was still asleep. I didn't hear any of this, but I woke up to him sort of yelling, and he just probably saw an opportunity when he saw the babysitter walk in, thought he could probably get some money. And after getting money and whatever he needed, he ended up gagging and bounding us, my brother and I, who was only 6 at the time, and the babysitter, and actually sexually assaulting my mum in a different room of the house. And I was 11 at the time, and I just don't know if I could really effectively convey how terrified I was at the time. At the time, it was the early 90s, and there were lots of abductions starting to happen around. I was just terrified that was going to happen to me. And we ended up, he left, and mum ended up cutting our hands free, and I ran to the nearest neighbour that I could find and sought help there. So what sort of followed was a really big police hunt, and you know, it was in the newspapers and everyone knew about it. And I think my brother and I really couldn't grasp what had actually happened. We were just so young and so innocent. But I think when something like that happens to you, you kind of lose your innocence, and you kind of, like, there are bad men out there, and they can break into your house and they can hurt you. So sort of what followed was, I reckon, 6 months of, I don't really even remember my mum being, she was there, she was around. We stayed with my grandparents initially, and for a couple of months, and then we moved back into our home, and that was really scary going back there. And because we were threatened, our lives were threatened. If we told the police, he'd come back and murder us. That was all kind of said to us, and they never caught him. And we were new students at a new school too. So we had moved from one end of town to the other, like I said, and moved to a new school. And I think we were about 5 weeks in to the school term, to the school year. And it was just another reason to feel alone and feel that my friends didn't really understand what I was going through. But to their credit, they were really great. And we didn't really ever talk about it. It was, but they were there, and I didn't feel so alone. And I mean, I hated standing out when I was a 11-year-old. So they just kind of, they were around me, and it just felt so much better. And I think, yeah, there was and living in a small town, there was lots of speculation about who it was and if my mum knew him. And that was very hard on my mum, probably harder than you could really imagine. And she really suffered during the attack, after the attack. And yeah, I just felt like she kind of went into a deep depression after that. And that's why I don't really remember her being there mentally. I think we were all trying to sort of find our feet after that. But, you know, we did, and we were very lucky. We had terrific psychologists that we saw, and that we were able, you know, to access. And it's not easy when you're a little kid to talk about your feelings and talk about these really big things that happened, but we were really lucky that we had access to that. So that kind of period of 10 to 11 and 12 was really significant. And I kind of felt that it kind of robbed us of our childhood, that, because it was just such a horrible thing to happen. But we had great family and we had great friends, and we kind of banded together after that. So, I mean, from something so horrible, we developed, you know, pretty close bonds together. And eventually, so that was in 1993, and in 2009, my mum received a card on her doorstep, and it was from a detective from a cold case unit in Melbourne, and he had actually tracked the guy down through another crime. Because you have to imagine that 1993, it was just before that cusp of DNA evidence being so prevalent in cases. And even though DNA evidence was collected, there wasn't really anything they could do with it. But however many years later, they actually could. So they tracked him down, and then it was another 2 years before there was a trial. So that was in 2011. And that was another part of the ordeal, because yes, he was caught. We had kind of moved on and tried to live our lives as best we could, and we did. We were doing a really good job of it, and this kind of sort of brought it all back to the fore. And being in the courtroom and hearing your statement read out that you made when you were 11, in, you know, and using really kind of, like, I felt so sorry for that little girl. And I just thought, I hope he gets put away so he can't do this to anyone else. And we had to create a victim impact statement to read out and to submit. And that, you know, sitting down to write that, it changed our lives, or for me, speaking for myself, it changed my life in so many ways. I mean, I developed a habit where before I went to bed, when I was a teenager, I would have to lock the door, check them about 3 times. If I didn't do it the right way, or if I lost track, I would have to do it again. And I guess that's just a trauma response, that trying to protect my family, that I felt like I couldn't do when I was 11. Is sitting in restaurants or cafes, like, it wasn't until I sat down to write the statement that I realized how it affected me, because I would try to sit in a space where I could see people coming in and I could have a quick getaway. And then there were nightmares for about 6 months after the incident happened. So kind of recounting that and putting that into words and having that, someone read that was really powerful. But he was sentenced. I believe he may have been out last year, but it's just not something that I think about all the time. I mean, it was a really massive thing that happened, but I really felt that with the proper counselling and people and family in our lives, we actually moved through that. So I don't dwell on that, and I don't, hate anyone. There's just complete indifference there. And it's funny because I was actually reading something, a quote said by Eddie Jaku, who passed away this week. He was a Holocaust survivor and self-proclaimed the happiest man. And he said something about hate and how it just eats you up if you hate something or hate someone. And it's just, you can say that you dislike someone, and I would actively dislike people, but I just don't have any hate for that man. I just have nothing. I just hope he never does it again. But that's just another way, I think, when you move, I don't think you can really achieve true happiness if you hate people. I just don't really think it's possible. I think it can make you sick, and it's something that you dwell on. So my teen years were pretty uneventful. Apart from I actually had my first child when I was 19. And so that's a big thing. And I was a single mum, and I had gone to university and I had to drop out, and I was actually studying journalism because I always had an interest in writing. So I came back to Shepparton and I had my daughter, and that was really tough. It's really tough having a baby, and anyone will tell you that. And there's just an added dimension of hard to it, I think, when you're a single parent and so young. I mean, 19, just like you think about, like my friends say, we were all going out and, doing stuff like that and you're having a baby and, feeding and, up all night and doing all that. And, I did that alone, but I did it with the help of my mum and my family. So, but that, I mean, I remember the day that I found out that I was pregnant, and it should have been the most horrible thing to happen to a 19-year-old, because it just, society tells you that, single mothers don't amount to much. And, it was 2001 and single mums, young single mums, were still pretty much a stigma then. Like it's totally okay now, but it's a little bit more accepted now. It's kind of not that, out of the ordinary to see a young single mum these days, and they're well supported and they're educated. So that, 2001, it was pretty hard. But I looked at the test and I just knew that everything was going to be okay. And it seemed hard, and I didn't much like being pregnant. It was just such an unusual feeling. I guess I was still, a teenager as well. But I just knew, even all through that, it was just going to be the best thing. And it has been the best thing. I have a beautiful daughter out of that. And she's just been a joy from the get-go. So like, I just think that sometimes things can be so bad, but they can actually turn out to be the best thing, and you really have to look at the big picture. So I had my daughter, and a few years later, I got married and had a son. And then about 5 years ago, I was separated and made the decision to leave because my ex-husband was involved in drugs and had an addiction, and the things that go along with that are, terrible financial trouble and infidelity on his part and family violence. And it just was not a situation I wanted to be in. And we really went through a lot, and it's the things that I went through around that time still affect me to this day. It's just something that I think will always be there. But I decided to leave with the kids because I felt it wasn't safe for them anymore. And I went to my mum's, and it was just, that was such a traumatic time. And I think it was traumatic for the kids as well. And I think my daughter was about 15 or 16, and my son was only about 7 or 8. So that's a big thing. And I had been through it myself. Remember, I was 10 when my parents separated. So I knew what they were going to be in for, but I just knew it would be worse if I stayed. So it was a hard decision, but in the end it was quite an easy one. It was made for me, really. It was so bad. But like now my kids we can kind of joke about it. We all share a bit of a sick sense of humour, and I think humour is one thing that has always been a part of my life from my mum's side and my dad's side. Yeah. And we say, that crazy time, and when we had to stay with mama, they call my mum mama. And then eventually when we had to move out on our own, and we had this little townhouse and things were falling apart, and that time was not an easy time. But it pushes you, it forces you to bond even more deeply. I thought we had a really good connection already, but my kids and I, but we really did bond over that. And I actually, when I separated and sort of got my head around that, I wasn't feeling very well, and I went to the doctor and found out that I was actually 14 weeks pregnant. So I can't, again, I had that feeling that things were going to be okay, but I couldn't understand how they could be, because things were so messed up. I had AVOs out against my ex-husband, and we were living with my mum, and I just didn't know how it was going to work. And I think once I found out, I spent about 3 days just in an absolute daze, and didn't even go to work. So the whole time this was happening, I would go to work every single day, because there's something really great about working with children, and working where I work with the staff are really great. And I didn't tell anyone what was happening, but kids don't care if they don't care. You have a job to do, and they want to tell you about what they're doing and whatever. And that really helped, because it was such a brilliant distraction from what I was going through at the time. Yeah. So I think when I finally came around to the idea of having, first of all, another child, and I was about 35 at the time, and I was thinking, wow, I thought my time of having kids I thought that had been and gone, and but I just knew again that everything was going to be okay. And I had this feeling for quite a number of years leading up to that point that something big was going to happen, something that I would need to be ready for, and something that was going to take a lot of strength. And it did, it really did. And anyway, I had my son, and he's just great, and he's just added this whole other dimension to our family. And I just think that, again, it wasn't a great situation. It was, on paper, it looked terrible. It was a terrible idea, but I just felt that it was going to be the right thing, and it absolutely was. I didn't always feel that way. Those 3 days where I was really shocked, I was feeling pretty down, and things were pretty bleak. And there was a time when I just thought, if something happened to me and I just disappeared, how simple, I wouldn't have to go through this, and, all my problems would disappear. But I felt my children needed me. So that just instilled such a strength in me, and it really got me through. And I started actually writing a blog after I had my third child. And I had lots of time on my hands as I was on maternity leave, and there was lots of nights spent feeding. And so I just wrote, and it was so healing to be able to write. And like I mentioned before, like, I have a bit of a sick sense of humor. So I'd be in bed and I'd be writing on my laptop, and I would just be cackling with what I started writing a blog, and I just think that just got me through. So laughter and finding something funny can just make a situation a little bit lighter and more bearable. So I started, writing, and I think over the next few years, I spent, like, my time was dedicated to my kids, and sort of trying to heal them after, what had happened, because they'd been put through the ringer as well. And humor, laughter, and just family time, that is so precious. And I can't tell you how healing that was for us as a little family unit. And I just think that when you go through something terrible, and you go through a couple of things that are so terrible, it's just how you look at it, and how, what you can take out of it. And if there's something silly, like, there's a saying, if you don't laugh, you'll cry. And it's so true.
Yeah.
And I just think that really got me through. So, fast forward a few years, and I think I was in a really good space, because I also think time is a great healer as well. And it's a really great opportunity to reflect, and you sort of reflect on who you are as a person, what you want out of life. And I think you should always have things, in your mind about what you want out of life. And it ended up meeting my lovely partner, who I'm with today, and he was going through similar things, and he had also had the opportunity to think about what he wanted out of his life. And I think when you do have that time to yourself to be able to do that, you're just not going to accept anything less. And we now, we have a great blended family, and it's not all fun and games. Like, it is tricky, blended families present their own problems. But I firmly believe, and we have talked about this, that what, you go through from a young age, and how you deal with it, and how you reflect on that, and what you can take out of that, really puts you in good stead for the future, and makes you appreciate all of the things that you have. And I think that is one of the keys to happiness, is just gratitude, and feeling like you really appreciate where you are. No matter what's going on, there is something that you can be thankful for. And I've read that somewhere, and that really stuck with me, and I've taken that on board today. So, yeah.
That is amazing. And to hear you talk about these pivotal periods and moments in your life. And Zoe, I know you personally. We're incredible friends, and having, again, listening to you today, I learn something new every time we have a conversation. And it's a point of reflection, but it's a point of insight, and it's also a point of appreciation for that connection. But yeah, learning from other people and really getting down to what's meaningful for someone else. And yeah, anyway, I'm rambling, but I did have a I did have a question coming full circle to your 40th birthday. You were sitting on the grass and you were reflecting, and you said you were in a place filled with gratitude, in a happy space, and you are content with where you're at the moment. Break that down for us. What, even if it's different parts of your life that you want to say, I'd love to unpack what is that feeling of gratitude and contentment that you thought of?
Sure.
Yeah.
I love a good podcast, as you know. I'm always banging on about what I've listened to, and I do take a break from the grisly true crime stories to occasionally try to better my brain and grow it, because I'm all about learning. And I was listening to a podcast which was The Science of Happiness, because I'm a little bit obsessed with this notion of happiness. And there was an exercise that you can do, or a daily practice, where it's called 3 good things. And you have to think about something good that happened to you that day. And the first thing is to give it a title. So give it a name the experience, and then sort of write down, or you can write down, you can make a song up. I'm not going to make a song up. There's no way I'm going to do that. I'm just going to tell you that's what I would do. I'm too lazy to write it down. Yeah. But we'll talk about it with someone that's really important in your life, and you just talk about why it was so important and why, how it made you feel. And I think when you do that every day, you actually start appreciating the most littlest, smallest, most insignificant things, because you're actually looking at them for what they are, and they're gifts. And I think the practice, when you do it daily, it just becomes second nature. And I just think that's really important. And it's a bit of a trite saying, we're just going to, be grateful and be happy and be kind. But what does that really mean? And there's a lot of toxic positivity out there, and a lot of talk about people who just say, just be kind and not worry. And I think that's really dismissive of, problems or issues that you're going through. And yes, it is imperative to be kind. But what does that mean? And if you're kind, you can still feel, you can give yourself permission to feel how you have to feel. And I think that's another key of happiness, is giving yourself permission to feel your feelings, sitting in them, but then moving on. And look, it sounds easy. It's actually not all the time. And, some days it's just not, the odds are not stacked in your favor, and you can have a bit of a meltdown, and that's okay too. And things can just seem really crappy, and you don't want to do the positive things. You don't want to do the 3 good things. But I feel that if you get to that point and you are in a habit of daily practice of just taking the time, then I think you do kind of sail through the rougher parts of your life a little bit more easily. And it's not the answer to everything, but I think it's a really good thing to start doing, is the 3 good things, because I think gratitude really is the key to happiness. And I talk about it with my partner a lot. And when I was listening to this podcast, I was thinking, yeah, I could do that. I could probably, I could do that. But I realized that I actually do. And with the people that I'm closest to in my life, I actually do talk about the good things. And especially with my partner, like, we will talk about things that we've done, or trips that we've taken, or a particular Sunday afternoon that we really enjoyed, that wasn't particularly significant for any reason, but the fact that we were just happy. And I think there's really great power in finding or having the ability to find something positive to be grateful for every day. I really think that's a really special skill that if you don't have just yet, the beauty is that you can grow on that, and you can keep getting better at that. So and being content with who you are as a person is really important too. I mean, there like I have flaws like everybody else, like my personality, and but I know them and I'm aware of them. But I know that there are good parts of my personality that my friends tell me that they like about me, and that's really good too. So sometimes it's better to focus on the things that you do have. And I know that, and we've talked about this before, the whole image, the body image thing. And as women and getting older and sort of feeling the pressure of, looking younger and fresher, and always we're kind of, there's a lot of advertising about bettering ourselves, and it's kind of giving us this idea that we're not good as we are, and physically, and that's really hard to take when you're faced with that almost daily. So sometimes, and I haven't really read about this, I just do it. Sometimes I look in the mirror and go, oh my God, I'm walking around and this is a skeleton. I have organs in my body, and I have skin protecting those organs from falling out and spilling all over the tiles. And it sounds crazy, but when you break it down like that, it's actually, you feel so grateful for your body. Like, I have two eyes that can see really well. I don't need glasses yet, and I'm 40. That's the biggest flex ever. And I've got, two legs that work really well, and they get me to place. And when I complain about being busy, I have an able body that can take me there. And, like my brain is like meat that has electricity in it. And like it sounds ridiculous, but you actually start feeling grateful for those little things. And happiness has to be deeper than a phrase or than something that's like, an information text or a graphic, an infographic on Insta, or stitched onto a bloody pillow somewhere. It has to be deeper than that, because otherwise it's not true contentment, that kind of happiness.
Absolutely. And it's interesting you say that about it has to be deeper. It's almost an embodiment, and for every person it's different, it's subjective, it's aligned with who they are, what they want out of life. It does, it has to be deeper. And
it does, yeah, absolutely. And I think you have to really like yourself as well. And I just think, I mean, it is as like, self-love and empowerment are terms that are bandied around all the time. And, a lot of people are using terms that really only come up in therapy, and like, attachment issues and all of this stuff. And which is great that we're getting so much knowledge about the self and all of that. But I just think that it's a lot simpler, and you just really have to, first of all, think about who you are as a person. And you don't have to love every part of yourself, because that's kind of impossible to do every day. But accepting is probably an easier thing to do, and just accepting, like, yeah, okay, I can be like that sometimes, but I'm working on it. And I think there's really great power to that. And I think it helps when you're talking to people and you're dealing with people. Like, as I said before, it's not, hating people isn't going to get you anywhere. And you can dislike someone, absolutely. And, there are people that have maybe done done terrible things to you. But I mean, I just think, yeah, hating is such a strong word. You can dislike someone, but I think the minute you start hating and you've just have that energy is a bit of can be a bit damaging. And I think that's when it can lead to self-destructive patterns, definitely.
Correct. And okay, so 2 questions, and they're the 2 questions you have posed. Who are you as a person, and what do you want out of life?
They're not hard at all. um, well, I think more or less I'm a pretty positive person. And I think that I know that I have been through some pretty rotten stuff. So I know that if something bad were to happen tomorrow, I'd be devastated, but I would be okay. It might take a bit, but I think I would be okay. So that's kind of comforting and liberating to know that about yourself, that you have a reserve of strength that you can call on. So I'm happy with that. And I think I'm generally a happy person. I've got things that I want to improve on. Like sometimes I feel like I need to be a better friend and I need to keep in contact with people because I'm really bad at that. And, sometimes I can be quick to judge, but I'm working on that. And again, that comes down to not so much how another person is, but it's how I feel about myself. I think that adds to the judgment. And I think that's true for everybody. So I feel really happy that I know my flaws and I know that I need to work on things. But I think I'm a good mum. I think I'm a good friend.
Yeah.
I love my job. I feel I'm good at my job because I really do love children. And I think, as I said before, I'm in the right job because I'm so passionate about it. I'm really happy too. And I think a lot of it has to do with the people that are around you as well. So I think I read somewhere that you're the sum or the average of the 5 people that you hang around the most, which I'm thrilled about because I hang around with some pretty awesome people like you. And I feel pretty happy about that because I really do have great people in my life and I have excellent friends. So I know that coupled with the reserve that I was talking about of strength that I think we all have, I know I've got that. I know I've got my friends. I know I've got my beautiful family. I've got a wonderfully supportive partner. I think I'll be okay. If something bad happens, it'll be terrible, but I'll be okay. So I think that's who I am. I'm a positive person. What I want out of life, I don't think living each day like your last is sustainable because that sounds really exhausting. But I think if I get the most out of my life and the most out of my day, and I still have goals and dreams, like I'd love to write a novel one day, and we've written a book and you co-authored a book that hopefully will be published soon. I have, little dreams for my little side hustles, and I want to see my children grow up and achieve their dreams. But I think that just all ties in with how you feel as a person and how happy you are. And if I can still do that every day, then that's what I want out of life. I mean, world peace would be great, but I think if you're happy with yourself and you will be kinder to people. And I think being kind in the way you talk to someone and the way you treat someone based on how you feel about yourself is the key to just having a really lovely community. So that would be what I would want out of my life, is to just keep working at being good and consistent and being grateful, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you were talking, I was thinking about the big things are there. Yes, they're very world peace, harmony, all of that. Yes.
Yep.
But it has to start somewhere, and it has to start somewhere small. And
Yes.
does it have to start with you as a person? Possibly. And then
Yeah.
and the ripple effect that you may know of, you may not know of. But yeah, it starts small, like with anything on this earth.
Absolutely. Yep. And there's a great quote. Maya Angelou might say this. People will, something to the effect, and I'm paraphrasing here, but something to the effect that people will always remember how you treated them or how you made them feel. And I mean, and then there's another quote that kind of comes in on the back of that one, which is always leave someone a little bit better than how you found them. And I mean, I think that's, you kind of have to, like you said, it's kind of, it could start with yourself, and you could think, how am I going to do that? And you have to think about what your gifts are and what you're good at and how that can make that person feel great. And I love cracking a joke, and I love, you know, I was so happy to get back to work yesterday so I could just ear bash everyone. And, you know, I've always got a story to tell, and, you know, I've got tons of stories to tell that I think are funny, but I love sharing them with other people, and I just love making them laugh. And I just think that is such a good thing, because you can be having the most rotten day, but if someone makes you laugh or someone makes you smile, it just can sustain you for a little bit longer. So I think that is, yeah, just looking after yourself, looking after the people around you, and having that ripple effect is mind-boggling sometimes as to how you can actually change people's lives with your attitude.
Absolutely. And the other question I had was your chapter name, Happiness Through Change. What was change like for you at, or what is change like for you at the age of 40?
I think that the change, knowing that everything around you can change and everything can just turn to mush so quickly.
Yes.
But having, if you are okay, and knowing that you'll be okay, and knowing that you are strong enough to withstand that storm that's going on, is incredible. And I think change is inevitable, and it's going to happen, and whether we like it or not, it will. And we just, I think having that inner reserve of strength that I was talking about in the midst of all this change is so powerful. And I mean, change like this year has been really significant, because, you know, we've had lockdowns, we've had isolation. So, I mean, as a blended family, you can imagine what, I mean, we were all together for long periods of time. So that, and the chopping and changing, and the going back to work, and then, you know, no work and working from home, and then the kids are at school, and there's so many emotions that are building up. And my oldest daughter moved out and started her, you know, university journey this year, so had to deal with that. And there's been deaths in the family, but I think the connections that you make to yourself and with other people can be the difference between really feeling like you can't cope, and actually being able to withstand that. And it's not even really a matter of coping, but knowing that you just have to stick it out, and you'll come out the other side better. And having hope as well. So hope, change, and being happy are all interconnected.
Absolutely. Zoe, before we do wrap up with a couple of final questions, has there been anything you've wanted to share and I haven't touched upon it, or even, thought to ask you about it?
No, I think we covered everything. I think the takeaways from this chapter, or my chapter, would be um, trusting yourself to be strong enough to withstand change, to be able to achieve that happiness as well, is really important. And being grateful, gratitude. I mean, you can really have a rotten day, and I've had days where I've just, I'm on the couch and it's 9 o'clock and it's been a terror of a day. But if you can crack a smile and if you can find something to be happy about or grateful about, then you're so ahead of the game. And I think they would be my two key takeaways from this.
Beautiful. And what does a perfect world, or your perfect world, look like for you?
I think embracing change and knowing that even if people don't agree with you, or if you don't agree with them, just really kind of accepting people for who they are, and the despite the noise that's going on, and we're seeing a lot of that lately, but really just kind of, yeah, a perfect world would be accepting people, accepting yourself, and realizing that people have flaws and we have flaws, but if you can kind of work through them and accept them, and look at the person that they are, and do that with yourself, I think that's incredibly has the potential to really change the community that you live in.
Beautiful. And like you said, things are dynamic, people are dynamic. We're in an ever-changing environment and world.
Yeah.
So, thank you so much, Zoe, for taking the time
Thank you.
and sharing your experiences. I can't even imagine how difficult it was to return to a space that was difficult. Thank you very much. And for anyone, oh, actually, for everyone that will be tuning in, thank you so much for tuning in, for engaging. And please share it with whoever you think might connect with this chapter or this conversation. We never know what connects with people and what touches them. Yeah, and I'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.